And welcome to yet another edition of the Bliss Catchers. Thank you so much for joining us and for helping us start on time. This is the 32nd edition of Bliss Catchers. It's the third season that we are into. In fact, we're winding down the season with next month's edition. It's a joy every time to meet new guests, new audiences, and celebrate the joy of being. That's really what drives Vani and me to put together this program every month on the last Saturday here at the Odyssey bookstore. And a lot of this would not be possible if it is not for the support of the Odyssey bookstore. They're such a generous sponsor. They give us the space, they help promote the event. And I must thank Ashwin, of the CEO of the store, and his team led by Parandaman, who give us complete support with anything that's required for this program. Why do we do the Bliss Catchers? I see new people in the audience, so I'll do a customary overview of the program itself. This program celebrates Joseph Campbell's philosophy of following your bliss. What he told the world in 1984 is still very, very relevant to all of us. That we live our lives in a very, very, very conditioned way. And that conditioning forces us to concentrate more on earning a living than living itself. Now, 10 years back, Vani, my wife, and I were plunged into a deep crisis. A crisis that we are still navigating through. We're still dealing with it, which is we're dealing with a bankruptcy for almost a decade. While everything material was taken away, which is the entire earning a living department of our life shut down, we understood the value of living and the value of living life meaningfully, happily. And that's what we come here to celebrate through this program. Just yesterday, there was a guest from a friend or a reader from Bangalore who read my book, Fall Like a Rose Petal. And he came up to Chennai all the way from Bangalore. And his question was, how do you manage to stay anchored when you're going through such a big crisis? How do you deal with this on a day-to-day basis? Now, each of us is dealing with our own situation, so I'm not singling out just Vani and me. I think somebody's dealing with a bankruptcy, that's us. Somebody's dealing with a health situation, somebody's dealing with the loss of a dear one, somebody's dealing with a relationship problem. So all of us are dealing with our demons, we are dealing with our crises. And in dealing with them, how do you wake up each morning? And the answer I gave the gentleman was, we look forward every single day to wake up and inspire people to be happy. Because we've understood the value of being happy despite our circumstances, which is most of us try to postpone happiness, saying I'll solve all my problems and then figure out a way how I can be happy. But we found that our problems were not going away anywhere. They were where they were and they were stuck, and so were we. So we said, how can we be happy while being non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering? And that idea has propelled us, has pushed us to come out and talk about our life. So I wrote my book, and we curate these programs, the Bliss Catchers being one of 4 that we do across the city. All of them are free, non-commercial events, and they give us great joy. Now, whatever we are doing is nothing original in this. Joseph Campbell talked about it, and even ahead of that, centuries ago, the Japanese had figured out a way to do this. In the Japanese culture, they call it ikigai. Ikigai means the reason for being. Why are you here? That reason is called your ikigai. And in a very loose way, they say, your ikigai is your reason for jumping out of bed every morning. So what is your reason for jumping out of bed every morning? When we ask this question to people, and we get exciting people with exciting answers, we also call them Bliss Catchers. And that brings me to my 2 guests this evening, who have found their ikigai, who have found their bliss, and who are following it with complete abandon, with complete joy. and they are Ragavan Manian and my dear friend Murali, who I will call Drums Murali. Please be seated as I introduce you, and I will then invite you over to join me here. Ragavan and I got in touch with each other almost accidentally, right? And it was at our dear friend Vijay Ragavan's house. There was a Vijay Ragavan is very close. Vijay Ragavan and Ramya are very close friends of Vani and me, and they hold home concerts. And they had a concert of the Manganiyars from Rajasthan, and that's where I bumped into Ragavan. And over dinner we exchanged notes, and I found that here's a man who has done the typical, sorry for using this lingo, but typical PSBB padips, which I was not. I'm also a PSBB alumni, but I'm not padips. But he went on to do IIT. He went to University of Virginia for his master's, and then he was a real, the NRI techie living and working in the US. He worked with Cisco, and then and many other companies. And then in 2011, he decided to come back to India. Now, somewhere early on in his formative years, when he was about 10, he had an opportunity to interact and learn music from the one and only Dr.Balamuralikrishna. And that changed his life. So when he came back to India, he picked up the threads of that, and I'm going to, talk to him about that in my conversation today. And ever since he's been back in India, it's been a journey of, as he calls, discovering newer forms of classical music and presenting them. Right, Ragavan? Would I be right in saying that? He also calls himself a lifelong student of Western classical, of jazz and blues. So that's Ragavan Manian for you, and I met him about 8 months back, and we are here today on the Bliss Catchers show. Thank you so much, Ragavan, for joining us today. It's awesome to have you with us. I'm going to talk to you a lot about your journey, your guru, and your bliss. Right? Interestingly, we have Ramya joining us, which is, hi Ramya, thank you for joining, which is Drums Murali's wife. Is it okay if I refer to you as Drums Murali? Absolutely. Right? So Drums Murali, again, accidental meeting. We were at this large wedding, and somebody was introducing somebody, and somebody was introducing Murali to somebody else, and I picked up he was being introduced as Drums Murali. So I went and Googled for him, and I found his story. He was, ideally his family would have wanted him to be a chartered accountant, right? Ideally. And he did try his hand at not only accounting, but also a couple of other jobs. But he found the pull of the drums completely irresistible. So he lives drums, he breathes drums, he plays drums, he sleeps drums. I mean, he is drums epitomized. And you will see them both in action today. And you can see Murali's setup over there, quite enticing, quite inviting. And in 2003, he set up a drum school called Jus Drums, which is in Alvarpet, which is a tiny little studio actually, but it is so full of positive energy. And that comes from the man himself. Look at him, larger than life, right? I would use the same word that Don Bradman used to call Sachin Tendulkar. When Sachin Tendulkar met Don Bradman for the first time, Don Bradman was asked, hey, what do you think of this guy from India? And Don Bradman said, he's a bonzer. Bonzer in Australian slang means a jolly good fellow. And that's really what Murali is. So thank you, Murali, for joining us this evening. It's a wonderful, wonderful moment for us. I must thank my friend, my dear friend there, S.R. Madhu, who wrote me an email saying, AVIS, whenever you have performers, you must have them perform a little piece as part of the Bliss Catchers conversation. So I wrote back to him saying, it's not always possible, but we give it a try. I suggested it to both the gentlemen, and look at what you have here. You have a brand new saxophone, okay, inaugurating, debuting on the Bliss Catchers show. We can't ask for a bigger blessing than that. And we have all those majestic equipment.
Brand new hung drum too.
Oh, brand new hung drum too. So I do hope this means a lot of fun today. and we're looking forward to the show. But essentially, ladies and gentlemen, this is a conversational show. So we will go into interludes of music, but we'll stay with the conversation. And the way it's structured is that we will have me in conversation with the two gentlemen for about 60 to 65 minutes. Then we have an opportunity where the audience asks the guests some questions, and then we wind it all up with a quiz segment. There are two quiz segments in today's show. There's a midway quiz segment where I will ask you questions about the guests, and you win these fabulous takeaway mugs, these beautiful mugs that Odyssey puts together. And then we have a question segment, a quiz segment, where the guests ask the audience questions and you get more mugs. So stay on till 8:29. This program will wind down sharp between 8:29 and 8:30. So you still have the rest of your Saturday evening to yourself. Thank you so much for joining us. Gentlemen, may I have you on stage, please? Thank you. Please be over here. I don't even know how they're going to start, what they're going to do. I could make out that they have something lined up, so let's wait and watch when they give me the cue to get started with them. So it appears we're starting off with a performance. as they're settling down, I'll quickly add a couple of more points to the introductions. When I heard Ragavan perform at a concert recently, the host of the concert was describing Ragavan's performance as follows. He said, "Inge engeyo Dr.Balamuralikrishna orinjittu irukra madiri irukku." And that is the feel that you get when you hear him. Thank you so much, Ragavan. And with Murali, I've attended his annual concert of his drum school, an event which is something to look forward to every year in Chennai. It's the 15th year of his drum school, and at the event, you can feel the energy that Murali and his students bring to the whole stage. They set it on fire, and a lot of that comes from great tutelage that Murali is able to offer his students, and from the youngsters. They come with such an open mind and the ability to perform so, with such a wide range of instruments, which are not exactly musical instruments sometimes, right? You use all kinds of stuff.
Not all the time. Yeah.
Not all the time. So I see a little bit of R.D. Burman in you. R.D. Burman had this great quality to make music from anything, and I see that quality in you. So thank you so much. That was an awesome start. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. So now let's get on to the main part of today. You can pick up your mics. Murali, that's your mic as well. Then turn it on and just check. Yeah. So let's get on with the conversation. Those of you who are waiting to be seated, there are some chairs here, and Odyssey can provide some additional chairs as well. Please settle down so we can have a fantastic conversation. I'm really looking forward to this one. So let me start by asking Murali, can you talk a little bit about your introduction, I'm told, to percussion happened at the age of 10. Was it directly with drums, or did you try any other percussion instrument before that? How was that phase in your life? What kind of a family do you come from? Can you talk to us about your early influences with percussion?
Actually, my parents hail from Palakkad. I'm born and brought up in Chennai. So we have this customary annual holiday which always leads to Palakkad. And there is a car festival that happens every year in the month of April. So, the speciality about the festival is they play the chanda morning and evening when the procession of the Swami happens. So, and all of us will walk behind the car and go around to the procession where this chanda will be played. And I will be walking with the chanda players ahead all the time. So I think the first percussion instrument that I got introduced to was the chanda, and it was a really very powerful, majestic instrument. Listening to it can push your adrenaline a little bit. So that was the first introduction to a percussion instrument, and that happened at a very young age. I can't remember, maybe 3 or 4. From then on, I've been glued to that instrument, and of course, I've got that instrument on. I play my solos on that. But after that, like a typical Chennai Vasi will do, I went on to learn the mridangam when I was about 10 years old.
Who did you learn that from?
I first went to a guru called Dr.M.Balamurali sir. He used to live in my area at that point in time. So I went to him to learn. I went for a brief period to Krishna Sabha, Rajapaya, but it was not working out. I was not able to go there on a Sunday afternoon. But my regular session started with Dr.M.Balamurali sir, and I started learning the mridangam. He would, of course, then obviously when I came back to school, the opportunities to play mridangam was very little. But I found that you have to play the mridangam, you have to play a film song, in the school arena. And I was happily playing, thanks to Ilayaraja. We were listening to all the music that was released at that point in time. And I was happily playing all the film songs on that. My guru did warn me, saying, if you keep doing this, then you're going to end up playing, for the films and not for the classical musicians. So I ended up playing for the films much later, not on the mridangam though, on the drums. And I ended up playing with some classical musicians too, but never on the mridangam, always on the drums.
So how did the switch from mridangam to drums really happen? What was your first introduction to the drums? Was there an event? Was it by accident? Was it by design? What happened?
nothing is by accident actually, if you say so. It's all by design.
At a spiritual
level, yeah.
There is a cosmic design.
But for me, I think I always used to like music, even if it's a Tamil Nadaswaram player at a wedding or a drummer playing somewhere, I just stand and watch, irrespective of what the occasion is. Any kind of drumming will attract me, and I like just like how it does everybody. And I think the closer I got to the instrument was when my senior called Sanjay Ramnath. He's a man of multi-talents, and one day he was playing the drums at the school. So I was just standing next to him and watching what he was doing. That would have influenced me a lot to take on the instrument, because I immediately wanted to try. Being a senior, he said, get out of here. But later...
How old were you then?
I must have been 11, 12.
So Sanjay was your senior in school?
Yeah, for 6-7 years he was my senior, and he was going to play for the annual day, so they were practicing and I was standing and watching him actually.
Okay.
So I think that triggered a lot of dreams about this instrument and how I want to actually be playing this instrument. And from then on, this shift happened slowly, but
I have a related question here. Before that, I'm picking up something very, very beautiful. It came almost very casually from Murali, but I think it's a very valid point he makes. Nothing happens by accident. And that is a fact about all our lives. We may tend to believe it or not believe it, but nothing happens by accident. In fact, Gita, Ramesh, Rumi says, live your life. Jalaluddin Rumi, the Persian poet, says, live your life as if everything is rigged in your favor. Everything is rigged in your favor. Most of us think that there is a cosmic conspiracy against us when we are faced with a problem. But I have seen that the conspiracy is not against us, but it is for us to evolve, for us to get better. So I pick up that very, very deep spiritual point over there, that nothing happens by accident. There is a design. And that design takes you to the front row of an auditorium and wanting to watch Sanjay Ramnath and say, you know, what's this all about, right? That sense of curiosity.
True.
But let me ask you a question. Today, in circa 2017, if a child wants to learn, see, there's young Vedant there, young Siddharth over there. If they want to learn drums, they can come to Mukambika Complex, and there is a nice school there called Jus Drums, run by a fabulous guy called Drums Murali, right? But what was your avenue then to learn drums? How did you actually start learning drums?
So the first misconception those days was that, you know, Western musicians are guys using meth, or, you know, Western musicians are people who are, maybe true with some cases, I do not know, but, you know, I've not even seen how it looks. So I didn't get any place to actually go and learn, and it was not a very welcome idea at home too, and things were not this accessible. You know, now you just Google drums Murali and you know where to go. Then it was not like that. There's no Google, by the way. And then if you have to say drums, then you have to look at people. I kept looking at one particular board on the roads, something on Avenue Road. Now I'm not even remember that name, but I thought I'll give them a visit someday. But that never happened. So I started, you know, trying my hand at it myself. And I found out that there was a gentleman called Johnny DeMello who used to hire out instruments and sound equipments to musicians. So I went and found him on 1000 Lights. He's still there. And I actually spoke to him and I said, you know, if you will allow me to practice. So I started observing people as they play, and I started trying to implement those ideas on the drums, and I slowly started practicing. He was nice enough to give me extend some credit too, because, you know, it's an expensive affair. And once you go there, you cannot finish in 3 hours. Being with the instrument by yourself, it just tends to go on, and I'll come back to him and say, will you please allow me to pay later? And he was very nice to allow me. He encouraged me a lot at that point, and that was, I think, the first drum kit that I played was from his rental equipment, and he fondly remembers.
So you rented the equipment, played it in his studio?
He has a practice room.
Okay.
He had a practice room, I think he continues to have it even now. So I went to the practice room, hired the whole place, then told him I actually want to use only the drum set, so can you give me like a discounted rate? So he said, just go and play, man, I'll see you later.
How old were you then when you were doing this?
12 and a half.
So I have a very important question. How did your parents deal with it, but I'll come to your question a little later. It's an important question. I'm going to go to his story a little later, but we're going to come to Ragavan's story now to get your story started, Ragavan. You say in one of your interviews that you met Dr.Balamuralikrishna when you were about 10, 11 years old. What was that meeting like? And what was the context of that meeting? I think unless you have a musical context, I think meeting Dr.Balamuralikrishna might not have happened. So were you like coming from a musical family? What's your family background like? And talk to us about that meeting and what happened.
So this was in 1984, 85. And in those days, Tambaram was considered to be not in Chennai. Neither was it in Chengalpet. It was in the Boondogles, basically. So there was once a year a musical affair that would happen, where all the greats will come and sing. It was in this Samaj that they celebrate Ramanam. So I had started singing by then. I was already performing concerts under the tutelage of a great guru, Pallavi Narasimhacharya, as well as my own my own dad's elder sister, Tenkasi Radhamma. They were training me for a longer while, and I think some of that had stuck on, and I had already started giving public performances, just small ones. And this one at the Samajam was special because I had been given a 30-minute slot. That's a lot of time for a little kid. And Pallavi sir worked very hard on me and then they had known by then that the performance after mine was Dr.Balamurali. So I guess they must have worked me extra hard. And he was already my childhood idol. My father is a connoisseur of music. And his bliss was this spool tape, which he would play religiously every day when he comes back from work, and usually it will play Balamuralikrishna. Sometimes it will play Cliff Richards. So he had a little bit of varied, in those days I would consider him extremely eclectic in his taste. So Balamurali was a staple, and so were some others. I listened to everybody on that school. That school was his life, and it was beginning to become my life too. So I knew of this man. He listened to my concert. I was starstruck, of course, seeing him in front of me. He garlanded me.
Wow.
And congratulated me, and that was that. And I was happy that my Agni Pariksha was over. For that moment, that was it, and I thought I was done, and I could go scot-free. But my father had some other plans, apparently. He caught me by the scruff and put me in front of Guruji himself and said, "This is the boy who sung in front of you." Guruji said, "Yes, of course I am here. He's here. Will you teach him?" So it was as blunt as that. You heard him sing, you garlanded him, and you spoke some kind words about him. Will you teach him? To that very, very sharp and blunt question, the answer was a very sharp and blunt, I will wait for me to retire and I will teach him. I will have time in my hands. And Balamuralikrishna, being the revolutionary, had suggested retirement from music. This is not done. Nobody retires from music. And he did not per se retire. What he meant was that I will not be singing 365 days a year, make it 300, and I'll have 65 days to spare. There'll be 1 or 2 classes for him.
So that's how it happened. That's how it happened. So again, it's a reiteration of the same point. Nothing happens by accident, right? There is a design that landed you in that Samajam in Tambaram on that day, right?
I think so.
And landed Dr. BMK there as well, right? I have to ask you a question here. So I sense from your first answer that music was part of your growing up years. You had started performing, there was a lot of encouragement from your parents. But typically in the adolescent years and post that, when you begin to take more quote-unquote life-related decisions, like I'm going to do engineering, and I'm going to I'm doing my JEE and I'm going to go into IIT. People tend to cause their passion and dive deep into earning a living. How was that process for you? Was there a constant connect even during your college years, both in India and in the US, with music? And how did you sustain that passion for that long during those years?
It is true that I must have worked the hardest I ever did to take the JEE. And those days it was 1 year of hard work. Nowadays I believe it is 6 years. It just got progressively harder and harder and harder. And I feel sorry for that. But anyway, coming back to my story, the 1 year and the fruit that it bore, an admission to a great college, IIT-Madras, and that too a good branch, a branch that I knew I would enjoy because I was always interested in science and physics especially, and electrical engineering was a segue into that sort of thinking. So as such, academically it was a high, it was a fantastic feeling. In terms of music, there was clearly a writing on the wall that there was some sort of dialing down that was going to happen. But interesting enough, it was around the same time that I appeared for the NCERT Senior Music Scholarship, and I got it too. So I was 16. I was taking my JEE. I was taking my senior scholarship exam. It was a fairly involved process with difficult questions. I got both. Right? Now the choice is, there's no choice. I am going to be continuing with music. Question is how much of my time is going to go into that. Okay. And at that time, I in retrospect, I could have spent a little bit more time on music. On the other hand, I could have done more on engineering. So that has been the sort of story of my life, What if I do 10% more of this and less of that? And I have experimented. I have had the luxury of the last few decades to try various combinations, everything from 80-20 to 20-80, and that's where the slider has been between music.
So you never
and
left
music.
one for the other. That's what you're trying to say.
Not so far.
Not so far.
And it's what I leave is not going to be music, and that's for sure.
Quite obviously, that's evident.
And music is not going to leave me either.
Right.
It's both ways. It's a symbiotic relationship.
That's fantastic. So the takeaway is that when you are faced with a life decision to choose between one or the other, there is a midway path that you can walk. And you say the slider moves 20-80, 80-20, depending on how you're feeling at that point in time, right? And at each stage, you keep moving the slider back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's really what is my takeaway in that question to him. Also for all of us, I think we're dealing with situations where children in our circle of influence, or as adults, as people in our midlife situations, we're wondering, should I leave this for that? And I think you can strike that balance if you work a little extra. If you think through this. And Ragavan's story is pretty much, very, very indicative of that possibility, right? It's pretty much indicative of that possibility. Let's go back to Murali there. Murali, I come back to my earlier question. Giving a child at 12 and a half, 13 years of age, ample money to try something as esoteric as playing drums is not a normal parental, way of doing things out here in our part of the country. How did that happen for you? How did you manage that? And at any point were you pressured to pursue something like academics?
Okay, yeah. Actually, the thing of ample money, I never mentioned it, I don't know how you got the idea. I used to save up money that my dad used to give me for going in the bus here and there, and I used to walk the places. And I used to save money. And see my older pictures, earlier pictures, you'll agree with me. It was this size. So I was walking a lot and saving up that money and whatever they give me for different occasions. So I was using up that money. My dad used to give me some money whenever he leaves town, saying, buy a chocolate or an ice cream. So I forgo all that. I think I amply made up much later. See, But so that is where the money came from, which is why I had to tell Johnny that I'm going to pay him later, because I had to wait till my father leaves town next time, take the 10 rupees from him and he leaves for my ice cream, and then settle this man later. But in the later years, they brought out a free bus pass. So I was not able to get the bus pass money, which I couldn't save. You walk, anyway, the bus pass was free. So, and we didn't have this concept of pocket money and, I'm going to pick up this, buy that. It was not like that. We were a typical middle class household, conservative in a lot of ways. But my grandparents were very, very encouraging. My father also, at a later stage, actually I have not credited him much all these years, but when I think about it, he has actually recorded a lot of this chanda music. He used to carry the tape recorder and come to Palakkad and record it and come back and play it for me. And I remember when I was in my pre-KG and LKG, I used to be adamant that if you play a song for me, then I will go to school. And I don't know where he got that patience, but he used to, normally he's not all that patient, but somehow at that time, he used to play me the songs of Shankara Bharanam, one cassette that he had, and he used to play me those songs, and I used to sing it in full swing with S.P. Balasubramanian, and then go to school. So, I wouldn't say that they were all absolutely okay. In an extent. My mother has always been okay. She's been like, you're trying to do what you want to do, but ensure that it's the right thing. I don't want anybody coming in and saying he broke my instrument, he did this and that. I was more worried. My father was very busy and he thought it's just one more thing that my son is doing, so let him do. It was not really, I have to be with the books when he comes back. To an extent that he was a terror. My friends will say, please go, it's about time, your father is going to come back, go and study. So it was like that. So I will get back home and be with the books when he's there. I don't know what I studied, but I'll be with the books. But I was kind of balancing at that time, and though my inclination was all slowly moving towards music, I didn't think at that point that possibly I would take it up as a profession. And I think none of them really took it, but I was anyway learning the mridangam. One thing my father kept repeating even today that, I paid 60 rupees to a typewriting institute and you went for 3 days. And, I was interested in a different kind of figuring that I didn't know at that time, but so it was like that actually. We kept quite a balance.
I love the point. There is a similarity between both stories. He talks about the balance. He talks about the balance too, in his own way, in terms of being able to save up what came his way as money. And I think at that age, I would have been more reckless with it. If I had had access to that kind of money, I would have been more reckless with it. But I think you were judicious enough to throw it back into what you believed was your passion. I think that's the strong message that's coming, which is that if we really want to do something, I think we can be creative about the way we approach it. You don't have to have a cookie cutter that if I get so much, then I will go ahead and do this. You can figure out a creative way, and you struck a bargain with Johnny DeMello, right? Your first drums kit owner. So in a mridangam kind of instrument, there is a lot of acceptance in a typical let's say Tamram family, that I want to buy a mridangam, you may get a mridangam. I want to buy a guitar, you may still get a guitar. But I want to buy a drums kit. How did your first drums kit happen?
Okay. Actually, my mridangam happened, as you said, I still have it with me. My mridangam happened when I started learning. My father dutifully got me one from Palakkad. But the drums didn't happen for a very long time. So when I actually started playing, I used to rent kits from Johnny DeMello. I used to do a lot of performances for inter-school, intercollegiate events, and that's how I met my drums guru, Hari sir. He came to judge one of the events, and he saw me play, and he called and asked me, whom do you learn from? So I said, actually, I have not learned, I just self-taught. So he asked me, do you know the names of these things that you play? What are these things called? Wow, you're playing this, what that is called? I said, I have no idea. I've just seen people and I'm playing. If you tell me to play this song, I'll play it for you, but I can't tell you the grammar of it. So he said, come, I'll teach you. And that's how I went on to learn, drums from him. So then I started going with him to concerts. And there was one guy who was used to do a lot of performances in this intercollegiate culturals. My friend, Abroon Ghosh, he had a group. So I just stuck on to him for the next few years and started playing his concerts, and he was nice enough to say, okay, you come and sit with whatever instrument you have. So I started playing the bongos, and when I got my different kinds of drums, I started working with him regularly for the next 7-8 years. So that gave me like a push. But the first drums happened much later because I saw that by that time the advent of electronic drum kits was in full swing. Now, I was more into, in the long run, I want to have my own setup of what I had in mind. So if I get a drum set now, one is you need an electronic pad to go and play concerts. When I say concerts, I'm talking about playing film music for weddings, parties, and everywhere, whenever there is an opportunity. So I decided that I will get the electronic drums first. That was my first drum that I got in '96. After working for a year at a hotel, saving up some money and taking a loan from my grandparents. And a year after that, but even before I had the drums, I had this electronic drum. I used to play concerts and spend all the money I get to paying the rent and transportation. You know how Chennai autos are even now. So I used to pay all of that money in the rent, but I just wanted to be in the circuit, so I continued to play. And when I got my drum pad, I saved up that money. I used to repay my grandparents for the loan, and then ask for the next loan, obviously. So everything after that came as a loan from my grandparents, and as a matter of a good luck charm, even though they are not there now, I take it from my uncle. He continues to give me loans. And then a year later, I got my first drum kit, which was a second-hand kit my friend was using, and he wanted to sell an upgrade to a better kit. So I asked him, why don't you give it to me? He said, yeah, sure, this is the price. So I paid him and got that. And a couple of years down the line, I made my own kits. Another friend made it for me. I still have it at the drum school. When you come, I'll show you.
So that's how it happened. So there's, again, a lot of creativity went in all through the process, right? In terms of convincing people to give you loans, whether they're the grandparents, or trying to convince a friend to sell his second-hand drum kit to you. So I think you found a creative way every time, right?
It just happened, actually. I don't know if I found it, but it just happened.
It just happened. I'll come back to Ragavan's story and ask Ragavan, during the years that you went to the US and you worked there also for maybe 10, 12 years. You were there in the US, right? And you must have got married around that same time and started raising a family. What kind of influence did the early tutelage under Dr.Balamuralikrishna help you stay grounded with music? How did you, despite the work pressures of life in the US, the pressure points there are pretty similar to over here, but they're unique in their own ways also. How did you keep your engagement with music going? How did you make sure that you didn't lose touch?
So when you're an expat in Indians are everywhere. You could go to a remote corner in Cambodia and there will be somebody there. At least a pan-Indian presence will be there, and you would strike conversation in the friendship. But besides just the Indian and pan-Indian community, how a grounding in a classical art helps is that you identify with it, and vice versa, you are identified by it, right? And when you are away from home, where you are grounding us, you seek that identity, and you find it in classical art much stronger than anywhere else, because connection to your past, your collective past, the history, the lyrics, the spirituality. So that is one thing that has always defined me, and never have I found it more useful in my life than in the first few years when I was abroad. Right, with having been an only child, been in Chennai. In fact, I haven't even crossed the Basin Bridge. That's what the northernmost point of India that I've been was northern Chennai. And then from there on, the northern hemisphere. Right. So I was just kicked out of the hemisphere itself. And when your sphere shifts, you have to find the center. And that's what the center that classical art, classical music, or dance, or literature provides you is so solid, And so my connects were with, when I was in UVA, University of Virginia, my connects were with the faculty of religious studies, When I moved to Pittsburgh, my connection was with Venkateshwara Temple. When I moved to Bay Area, my connection was with South India Fine Arts, my connection was with the Maratha Mandal, my connection was with Kannada Kutta, my connection was with the Pakistani Association. Because we are very, very similar. You know, when you're here, you fight your battles and your wars. When you're outside, you identify what binds you and what unites you. So you live practically in a mini India in these places. You are one, you eat together, you exchange art. So I think I learned the most rapidly, not just the interaction with other Carnatic musicians, which is my root, but with Hindustani musicians, blues musicians, with classical pianists.
Your center.
It was
I think in some cases
of talent around me.
Your center finds
I was attracted to them and vice versa. There was a small community of dramatic
story as we go along.
There was
you will see that happen as well. So I think fantastic conversation we are having so far, but I'm going to take a midway break and introduce what we call the midway quiz segment. This quiz, ladies and gentlemen, is for you. It's on these two gentlemen. And whoever answers these questions gets these mugs. These are beautiful mugs. Your coffee tastes all the better with this. Okay? So let's get on with these questions. Both are very mocha questions, by the way. Okay? They're not very serious questions, so don't get hassled. We'll ensure that somebody walks away with the mug. Okay? So my first question is on Ragavan Manian. Are you all ready?
Yes.
Right? Can we not block the view so I know exactly who's raising their hand, who's answering? And as always, my decision will be final. Right? So if too many answers come out, I'll lean in the direction of whose answer I heard first. Okay? So the first question is on Ragavan Manian. Quick one. On the buzzer. Connect Ragavan Manian to an Asian currency.
I should not, because I am his father.
So we'll exempt you, sir. Thank you.
Yen.
Not yen?
Remnian B.
Huh?
Remnian B.
No.
INR rupee.
No, not INR rupee. No. You are going by his last name. Don't go by his last name. You're walking in a different direction.
What? Riyals.
No, not Riyals. Asian.
What?
Asian. Think other Asian currencies.
Bangladeshi currency.
No. I thought this was a sitter.
Cambodian currency.
Ringgit Malaysia.
Yes, Ringgit Malaysia. It is, Ramya. It is Ringgit Malaysia. RM. Ragavan Manian. You have to give away this. Ramya, please come forward.
You actually won a mug. Good, I've tried a coffee.
Okay. So this one, Ragavan Manian, RM, Ringgit, Malaysia. You have to think of what I will be doing at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, getting ready to come here. I can't keep Googling and thinking of tough questions. Okay, I have to ensure that you guys win a mug so you go and tell more people about the Bliss Catchers show. Right? Now let's go to Drums Murali's question. Okay? Connect Drums Murali with the Indian Administrative Service.
Wow, that's nice.
Yes, sir. Absolutely right, District Magistrate. It is absolutely right, TM for District Magistrate. I told you the questions are very mocha. I gave you my disclaimer.
He must have been one.
Mr.
He must have been India.
So, IAS officers who become collectors are also called district magistrates because of their executive magistrate powers that they execute, they have. So that was the midway quiz segment, and we are ready to go past it into the second part of today's session. And so I'll go to Murali and ask you my next question. Murali, how difficult was it for you, or talk a little bit about that phase in your life don't go to just drums yet, okay? But let's talk about that phase in life between 96 and 2003. You kept multiple jobs, you were playing drums, you were performing with Nabarun, you were doing multiple things. How difficult was it to sustain yourself doing multiple things? Why did you not get sucked in by this rat race called earning a living? Your family wanted you to be a chartered accountant, you tried your hands at accounting, you almost went into entrepreneurship. How did you stay away from the lure of all this and kept getting drawn back into drums every time?
Actually, thing is, obviously I have a home to live in because provided by my parents and my food was taken care of. So I didn't have a necessity to, not like the US where you move at 18 and you have to find your own accommodation and things like that. So I didn't have that problem. So there's no necessity to really earn and support the family, but only to follow my dreams. And I've never thought that earning money is a problem. If you want to do it the right way, there are very many ways. And very, very many ways for the wrong ones, but I'm not taking it there. I wouldn't know them. People used to ask me, so even now people, sometimes when people speak to me, they ask me, what do you do? So I tell them, I'm a drummer. Oh, great. And then what do you do? I haven't even today. So you must have imagined then, 21 years back. The thing was, when I knew that we were not in a situation to get a drum kit, when I finished school in 95, I straight away found an employment in a hotel, and I believe that I can do anything with a little bit of effort. Anything. When you say that you have to tomorrow start, being the pilot at Indigo, I'll take it on right away. I'm a guy like that. I like challenges and I take it up. So I found a job right across my home in a hotel in the accounts department. And in a few months from then on, I had just finished my 12th actually. In a few months from then on, I had a couple of assistants, one of whom was an MCOM graduate, by the way. He didn't know for a year that he's working under a guy who's just work standard. I didn't give him the opportunity to. My boss told me, don't tell him. So I was working and saving up money to get a drum kit, and I was having this connections with different groups. I used to go to watch concerts, and I used to go out to concerts with my guru. So he would give me an opportunity to play for one song and would encourage me and all that. Then I was attached to a group in Varun's extent of Chennai, in the North Madras, and they used to do a lot of shows, very little money, but it used to keep me busy, otherwise I was not going to do anything in the evening, so I'll just go and play with them. They'll do like 35 shows a month in 30 days, people like that, in different temples, and I like going to temples, so it just worked fine both ways. So I was playing with them for some time, and my aim after I got the instrument was to pay the loan back and keep up my credibility. It was very important to me because then I could ask for more money for other instruments and my bike and other things. I was always clear that I will get things that I can afford. I don't want a Merc. It's not worth it in Chennai anyway, so I'll only get things that I can afford to keep. I was very clear in that from day one, because when I buy something or I get something, it's for me and not for anybody else to see and make a judgment. So it's anything that I can use and be happy with. So I had that thought very deeply rooted, and I was doing things one after the other. So I had this job, and I worked with a couple of other people. I worked with my friend who's a filmmaker, Jabbar. He's been a great influence in some of my work, in the way I think, and he's influenced me a lot. And then my friend, we set up a band simultaneously from school itself. Me, my friend KP, my brother who plays the guitar with me even now, and my friend Suresh who's in the US working somewhere busily. We all set up a band, and we used to perform for a lot of anybody who calls basically. Money was not important. I want to play the drums, so I'd be the guy who will go and get the concert. And somehow we managed a few wedding concerts too, and we played all that, and they all liked it. All young looking things, and for the people organizing these, they didn't have to spend much money. They had to get us a good sound system and pay for the instruments rental. So imagine doing a girl's wedding. The girl's dad was very happy to spend less. So he was always saying, play something, whatever you want, but we were good. And it was all going like that, not regularly, but once in 3 months we'll get a gig and we'll play. And it was going on, and my friend referred me to one Mr. Swaminathan. I went to see Swaminathan because he said Murali is the guy for this job. It was setting up franchisee for First Computers, and I go in and knock on the door, and the door opens, and I see the great maestro who later became my guru as I became a student, Murali Jus sir, standing at the door. So the first thing is to just fall at his feet and say, hello sir, namaskar. So I said, I've come here to see Swaminathan. Sorry, I think I've come to the wrong place. He said, no, he's my son, go up and see him. So I went and met Swaminathan. I worked with him for more than a year and a half. And actually it was Swami who told me that, listen, you can't be doing this and that. If you want music to give you the kind of returns, not in money, but the happiness, you'll have to be there fully. Look at my father. You have to be there fully, and we'll give you 200% back in kind. But if you're here and there, then you'll be doing this for a lifetime. So that kept me thinking, and I was just looking for excuses to leave everything and jump into music full time. I was in that job for more than a year. Then one day, finally, I told him that I'm quitting. So by then he had handed over the business to somebody, and they were fine to letting me go. They found a replacement. So I quit, and on that day, my friend calls me and says, I've set up a company and I want you to be the manager, events and promotions. So I joined as an event organizer with him. I was there for 6 months until one day a day came that I cannot attend the concert, but I had to go for an event. And that was the day I called quits. This was in '99. So I said, I'll do this event for you, but I'll organize everything and leave, and I'm not coming back because music takes priority and there's no coming back. And from '99, I took it as a full-time profession. I was not doing anything else, but I was really worried about this. Even now when people ask me, so what do you do in the daytime? I don't have an answer. I practice, I go to the bank, I go to the store, buy something. My wife sends me on these errands and I do all that. I go buying clothes and stuff like that. Yeah, so, I have a lot of things to do in the day. I practice, I think of music. There's no schedule for a musician, it's like you're practicing all the time. You don't have to go to a place and practice. After a certain stage, you're actually practicing many times. So many times my wife knocked on the bathroom and say, enough, now come out. So it happens, both as children and as musician adults. So I decided that maybe I could utilize the time better, and I was being called to a lot of colleges to judge their events, very young. And also, perform. So whenever I go, there'll be a horrible sound system, which continues even today in many places. I'm very worried about the sound system because in a smaller space like this, it is okay, but not otherwise. And if you don't have a good sound system, people tend to get, they tend to think differently about the music that you play. It doesn't portray yourself well. Right. So I spoke to these colleges who called me and said, listen, anyway, you're getting like a really bad sound system. Can I help you with it? And I think it was Ethridge College who came up and said, please, can you handle the sound system for us? So I quickly, as usual, took some loans and got up a nice set of sound equipments, gave it to my sound engineer and said, you keep it, you maintain it, but when I call you, I want you to come and set this up wherever I say. So he was very happy with the idea because he couldn't afford any of those instruments anyway. And I started working on sound for college culturals and giving them instruments on hire, and I found that all the women's college in Chennai kept calling me. Now don't ask me why only women's college, I do not know. So they just kept calling me again and again, and I started helping them in the other aspects of setting up. Many of them are my good friends even today. Over 20 years now, are my very, very good friends. And so I kept myself busy doing those things until I set up Jus Drums. These things kept me very busy.
I'll come to the Jus Drums question, but the key here is, go back to what Campbell said. When you follow your bliss, doors will open. When you follow your bliss, people will come in your zone of bliss and they will connect you to your next orbit. That's what he meant. So the door opens and who's standing there? Murali. And he gets an opportunity to learn from the maestro. And what does his son tell him? His son could have been a pakka capitalist and said, here's a guy that I can, work. He works hard and he's creative, and so we can squeeze him till he retires. So let's keep him on our team. But he says, don't ride two horses at the same time. You'll never get anywhere. Instead, go after what you believe in. And that advice allows him the clarity, brings in that clarity that later on shapes the direction that he takes in his life. So I think there is a great merit in soaking in drinking up this philosophy that if you follow your bliss, doors will open, connections will happen. I think the first step is what is very important. That's what I pick up from you, Murali. I want to come back to the Just Drums story, but I'll go to Ragavan now to ask you, Ragavan, when you decided to move back to India, obviously there were some personal reasons, but you did something very interesting when you moved back. One is having had your fair share of academic success with IIT and an MS in the US, you come back and you enroll for an MBA program to a B school, the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. And then after you come out of it, you actually go and work for Shankar Mahadevan at his academy in Bangalore, at his institute in Bangalore. Why were those two choices important for you at that time? And why not take that deep dive into a full-time musician?
Yeah, it's not a $1 million question, but it's about a 25 to 30 lakh rupees question, because that's roughly what it costs to do an MBA in ISD. It's a fantastic program, by the way. I lost every day I spent on the academic side of. I love learning. I love studying and so discovering concepts behind how the world runs. I love that. That's the scientific aspect of life that I truly believe that is a gift as much as music is, right? Now, I thought that this would be a good time to take a sort of a sabbatical, right? While it could have been music, I thought that I had to bet long, take, if you had an option and you wanted to see, do I sell or do I buy and hold? I was the buy and hold guy. So I bought or bit the bullet. I did my MBA, and true enough, it was sort of a leverage to do something outside of pure technology. Because until that point in time, I was on the technical ladder. I was engineer and another level 2, level 3 principal, and so on. And here I could now start to work on product management, which I did for a brief while in Hyderabad before I moved on to running a music academy. Now, that was definitely a life-changing experience, because not only did it kind of align with music, which has always been my calling, it still is, right? And I'm deliberately not answering the questions why I did not plunge in, because I don't know the answer. But it did bring me closer to my bliss, right? And at the same time, it brought me into education per se. I have always been a folk educator. I have been teaching people since my days with Dr.Balamurali. I would teach some of the younger students in his class if he wanted me to. In the US, I continued teaching people, whoever was interested in the music, or so I had a few students here and there, and so this was a chance for me to formalize some of that learning. So I set up the curriculum at the academy and streamlined it so that it is basically a sort of a first course all the way to a university program. So that sort of a step-by-step approach, which brought me, exposed me to various musical curriculums across not only Indian classical, not only Hindustani or Carnatic, but also how do people approach it in the West? How do, for example, the Cambridge drums curriculum. Those are things that I could actually, for the first time, study and understand and love the structure behind what goes into curriculum development. So that was a good sort of an exposure for me in life, right? Of course, that was not to be a very long-term engagement, because Chennai beckoned, right? And for very close to the heart personal reasons. At that point, my father was like, yeah, uncle, my guru was not doing too well either. And I wanted to be even closer to them than I was in Bangalore. I didn't want this once in a few weekends trip and then hurry back. So I decided to move, and providentially I found a very sweet engagement in Chennai. So it did seem to have a nice sort of progression to it. I had to leave the US, I had to do something here so that I could continue with another dimension of intellectual thought, another possibility but it is also connected to music. You see, there is a curriculum angle to it. It may not be for performance, but it is deeper understanding. Right? And it brought me again, it got me to work with a musician like Shankar, who's fabulous, who's so rounded as a showman, as a multi-talented, right? So me with my multi-instrument genre experience, having to work with somebody similar but a high achiever, I learned a lot.
So what I'm picking up is that it was your thirst for learning, for understanding a different dimension of yourself that led you into the AVIS program, and it was also your thirst for exploring music as an educational platform, right? As an opportunity where you can not only educate yourself how to run an academy, but you can also through the academy talk about how curriculum can impact students, right? And that's what drew you, that thirst for learning drew you into its fold, but then there was a musical connection. And now I understand you do a course at the IIT-Madras where you teach the engineering of music. Would that be too big a statement to make?
No, it's actually very accurate.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So fast forward a few years, and my startup is founded by two very good friends. One of them is here, Balaji. It's called Imaginators, and we work with children. We are trying to shape thought in education for pre-primary and primary. Right? So it is a very ambitious, very lofty idea, right? And it is very close to my alma mater, IIT-Madras. So in the course of this engagement, I started talking to people in the faculty of IIT, saying, would you be interested in sending some students for internships? That was really the start of this. But the return question they had for me is, would you be interested in teaching the physics of music in engineering design? That would be a win-win. Send me a student and I'll teach you for internship. So they gave me an intern. I gave them time. And that time was time beautifully spent, because I would now take apart the sine wave or the Fourier series or the transforms or the wavelets of how music basically builds up and causes what it does. Now, music is a very visceral experience. It is very deep down. We can never explain. It's one of those intangibles. It is like spirituality. You'll never be able to place your finger into why is it beautiful. You can keep writing papers, you could keep theorizing. The closest that you can get, I would say, in the physical dimension is to understand the physics, to understand the construction, and through that understanding, trace the history of this musical instruments, whether it's vocal, where it all starts with, percussion, which comes right after in the history of instruments, to the flute and so on and so forth. You see that human scientific endeavor and musical innovation go hand in glove. There is a very strong connect.
That keeps you engaged with the medium, as well as the joy of exploring it from a very scientific angle.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. Music is visceral. You can't put a finger on it. That's what I'm taking away from that answer. That's amazing. I have one question for you before I go to Murali, but before that, just for the information of the audience, I'm looking at the time and I'm seeing that this is a very engaging conversation. I know that the gentlemen have planned a little piece to play at the end of this conversation. So I may not have time for audience interaction. We'll see how it goes. But if we don't have time, please stay back and interact with them post 8:30 p.m. Let me go to you for a very quick question. At this stage in your life, when you have you have in the last 6 to 8 years perhaps, you have been performing more, more prolifically, while parallelly having the freedom to be with imaginators or with any bread and butter kind of roles that you have had. At some point, does it at all matter that you are not pursuing music full time anymore? Is that a redundant question now?
No, it is a very, very pertinent question. Honestly, there is, in a musician, there is an angst, always. Whether you are an amateur who does it for the love and nothing else and no monetary reward, or you're a professional. Murali said something that I agree completely, which is that a musician is always at work. A musician does not take a break. There is no bathroom breaks. The bathroom is itself a place where he composes music.
Beautiful.
So it is actually very important to understand that a career in music is no less stressful than a career in technology or a career. In fact, it is worse in a sense, because the musician has no breaks. Okay, I mean, you go to a vacation in an island. What do? I sit with my bansuri. What does the musician do? He does the same thing. I mean, I am a musician, all right, but he's at work. He's literally trying to make the next concert work. Where I am basically playing for the sake of it, right? Now, what would I really like to do is to play for the sake of it 24/7. And that would be lovely. Now, falling short of which, I would really like to play more in public and engaging with others. Keep something of the engagement with, I wouldn't say corporate, but the engagement with education, the engagement with training people, shaping minds. That, for me, the connect with imaginators is not so much a salary. I don't draw a salary. It is for being part of a team which very strongly believes in making a fundamental change in the way we think about education, right? So it is not even as if we are, of course we would love to make a killing of it, and if we don't, I mean, so be it, right? But there is it's a very idealistic thing about both this and that, both being able to do music for the sake of doing music, as well as being able to give back in terms of finding these patterns, teaching people about the workings, the innards, the emotional impact, how it affects the mind, how it could be therapeutic. There is no end to it. I mean, music is a blanket term that encompasses every aspect of it. It's so deep in our brains. That's why I said putting a finger to it is impossible. It is too deep in our neurological making, our mindset. So that is, whatever I do, there is something always playing in my head. That's the song.
I like that. I like that line. There is something always playing in my head. There's a pun there, but it's a very, very valid pun. It's a very, very valid pun. Music is something that is 24/7, and thus spake of Bliss Catcher. Awesome. Thank you so much. Murali, question for you after which we'll take that quick break into your little performance. But the question is, when you set up Just Drums in 2003, you as I've seen your career, talk about your career, you're basically very creative with the way you managed every challenge that came your way. But setting up a music school, a drum school at that, and I guess you set it up in the terrace of an apartment in Nandanam to where you are now in Mukambika complex, where it's a small place but you do a lot of stuff. Don't you feel the pressures of running an enterprise, a business, the stresses of having to take home a certain
amount of money every month. How have you dealt with those everyday demons that everyone faces and feels scared about? What gives you the courage to blow on? And it's been 15 years, it's not a mean task that you've achieved to pull off, and today to be considered a kind of a destination school for many people who want to learn drums. And he's got students from the age of 80 at the top level going down to 8 or younger, 5. And they all perform together on stage once every year. So that's something that you managed to do. So where do you get the courage from? What gives you that courage?
And people used to ask me that, so does this really work out? Do you make money enough? No man wants to talk about a salary. I'm no exception. So I tell them, how much do you pay to go from one place to another in Chennai? I tell them the longest distance. They say 300 rupees. So I always quote this example of being a good auto driver who's called back again and again for his service. That's a decent way to live, right? You do some work and you get paid for it. You can earn about 2,000 rupees in a day. Now, given the current situation, you can easily earn 2,000 rupees a day, which means 60k a month, working only like an office job for say 10 hours, which means 60k a month is many IT guys' salary today, looking at the market, which is a good amount of money to live a very decent life. So, I'm sure I've earned enough good friends and goodwill for somebody to buy me an auto. If I have to do that, I'm saying, so that is how I used to think. I was very open to doing anything. And luckily, the support that I got from my family and I continue to get has been awesome. So initially, my father was very worried that I was taking on to something that nobody has done. How will we get him? I'm sure it must have run in his head saying, what will I tell him? And I have to get him married. And what does he do? Things like that must have really come in his head. I know, being in a bank job. Actually, they never said you have to be this. I had the typical, so do you want to become a doctor or an engineer? I had this typical question from everybody when I was young, and I answered saying maybe an engineer. Okay, so we were just changed places a little bit. I was not as fortunate as Varun to go to IIT. I only go to IIT to perform and do lectures. I went much later, but I wanted to become a chartered accountant because of my my liking to numbers. Most of the phone numbers, even today, I just pick up from my phone and dial and not look at the name. I like numbers actually, they do something to me. And music is full of numbers and maths. So I think it's, been there. And eventually, thanks to Raja, I've become a musician today. Listening to his kind of music, there was no need to listen to any other kind of music. Of course, until I moved on to playing professionally, I listened to all kinds of music. I continued to listen because not everybody plays Raja's music, so I got to play with other people, so I listen to jazz and other things. So this question has been there constantly, saying, like I said before, what do you do? Comes even now. When I set up the drum school in 2003, actually I had mentioned in an interview that my plans are to set up a drum school and do something innovative with that. So it came out in a paper as what to expect out of the summer in one of the newspapers on 29th of March 2003. And I just woke up, switched on my mobile, and I got a call saying, I believe you're setting up I believe you have a drum school and you're going to teach drums. I'm like, hello, who told you that? It's in the paper. Well, I'm going to call you back. My first drum school student, Divya, she called and asked me this question, and then I got about 80 calls in the next couple of days. But I had no idea what I'm going to do, and I didn't have a place. Until then, whenever I went to these colleges, at least 5 people will come and ask me, sir, you teach, can I learn from you? But I can only accommodate 5 students in a week. The first student comes at 6 o'clock in the morning, we carry all the instruments to the terrace, we play there till 9 o'clock until Chennai's sun comes up. And the last student and myself will bring the drum set down. That is how I was operating since 1998 to 2003. 2003, when this thing came up, it was in the papers, and I said, why not? What do I need? Okay, I need to pay the guy some rent and I need to earn that money. What will that rent be? So that was the way I was thinking, and my younger sister has always been very helpful, just like my older sister, and my wife does all those helps now. She used to carry all my instruments when I come late. My mom used to stay away because I was too young to be given a home key. At 19 years, my mom will stay away till I come back from a concert, and wait for me to load all the instruments. My sisters will help me, and that is how it was. We are a very close family that way. So she said, why don't you talk to the lady, where I was going for a tuition on the terrace of the home. So I went to them and I asked them, is it drum school? You drums? Very loud. I said, no, it'll just be like your TV serial volume, don't worry. And they said, okay, anyway, we're going to demolish this building. So you take it for 3 months, we'll give it to you. Maybe they thought I'll demolish a few of them even before they started the work. They were nice enough to give me the place, and then the day I opened, 14 students came and enrolled. All of them are in touch with me. They call me for my birthday, they call me for Diwali, and those 14 of them, all of them are in touch with me. Their families have become an extended family for me. It's like that. And then it just kept adding on. So they were all now, the parents were worried that I will just finish the summer camp and be done and not have regular classes. So I had not designed the program with the physics of the instrument and all that to actually set up the drum school. I just opened it, and I know that when you have to teach somebody something, you have to start from the basics. So I start from the basics, and I connected every exercise that I taught to something that is practical in our day-to-day life. Like I often say, the first beat of the drums is the walking beat. You just play right, left, right, and that's how you walk. So kids found it very easy to connect, and I do that even today. So that is how I started off, and then there was no looking back. And
so the answer I'm getting from you is that don't intellectualize life. You go with the flow, right?
Leave it to them to intellectualize it. I mean,
yeah, you don't intellectualize it. You take a decision, you throw it at the universe, and you go with the flow that comes your way. Right? Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great answer. I'm going to let you have your little performance, but after we conclude the session, okay, because I'm looking at the time. But it's time for the quiz questions that they will ask you in the audience. We won't let you go without your marks anyway. So please stay on for the quiz questions. Can we have Raghavan's first question? Yeah, Raghavan, your question. So this is a question that the guest is going to ask you, okay? And you win marks for it.
I'm wondering if I should ask a physics question or a music question.
Lyrical question.
Cricket. A great shot is music. So if I'm going to name 4 musical instruments. I'm not promising that this will be easy, but you have to tell me which one of these 4 is not a wind instrument. Not a wind instrument. So you could say just 1, 2, 3 or 4. I'll give you 4 choices. 1, blues harp. 2, Haydn harp. 3, jaw harp. 4, pedal harp.
that's IIT guy I play.
1, blues harp. 2, Haydn harp. 3, jaw harp. And 4, pedal harp. Which one is not a wind instrument? Correct.
Pedal, that's again in the family.
Wow.
So father and son, both of them get marks today.
How did you
Pedal, anything you pedal. See, the others, something must be there. So pedal was different.
Very nice.
Just a guess, I just took a chance.
Good, educated guess. Only your question.
Right. There is one particular wood in India. See, abroad they make percussion instruments out of maple and hickory. That's the wood they use. But there is one particular wood in India, particularly in South India, that is used, and it's supposed to have a natural resonance built in, and it's best for percussion instruments. So can somebody tell me?
Jackfruit.
So I heard it first from her, so I'm going to pass the mark to her.
Okay. So more families, more mugs. These are all regular collectors of mugs. They go. Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Murali. So, ladies and gentlemen, the way I'm going to wrap up today's session is I'm going to do the wrap up because I have this kida in my head that it must end at the 90th minute. And then I will request you to stay on for exactly 3 minutes after that because they do have a little performance, and let's listen to them and close the evening with that. Okay. Before I do my wrap, before I tell you what I'm taking away from today's conversation, on behalf of Team Odyssey, I have little mementos to give them, trophies for the Bliss Catchers. Very few people in the universe get these trophies. Ragavan, this is your prize for this. And this is a little hamper from Hazel, who are our gift partner. That's a little journal for you to write your music notes. Okay. And this is yours, your Bliss Catcher trophy, sir. And your hamper from Hazel. Please. What I'm taking away from this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, is two beautiful people, two beautiful journeys. One of them being very intuitive with his passion, being creative with whatever he does, and finding a solution, being ready for anything. Dildar Admi.